What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're gonna speculate about the 40th birthday of someone near and dear to my heart, a certain Italian plumber that goes by the name of Super Mario. That's right, believe it or not, Mario is turning 40 this year. In fact, in just about a month, we are going to celebrate his 40th anniversary as a gaming icon. And with that, for the last 2 decades has come celebration from Nintendo in the form of merch and new console themes and, of course, new games. And I think we're going to get a big celebration for the big 4-0 this year for Super Mario himself. I think Nintendo has a good bit cooking. That's the vibe I think we've all been getting. And though we've gotten some fake rumors here and there, you know, a fake logo, a fake 2D Mario collection, I do think there's going to be a lot of real stuff that we find out about next month. Jesus. But before we talk about that, and we're just going to hop right into it, by the way, saddle in, it's going to be a good one. I want to talk about the idea of Nintendo celebrating Mario's 40th birthday, because I feel like a lot of people are doubting the fact that we're going to get a big celebration for the 40th anniversary of Mario. And sure, we might not get a big celebration, we might not get a celebration on the level of Mario 35, because that was a pretty stacked, 10-minute direct that we got in 2020. But I think the idea that some people have been floating out that we're not going to get anything, any sort of mention, any sort of celebration for Mario's 40th birthday is just ridiculous. They are going to mention it, and they are going to celebrate it in some way. Even if it's just merch drops and a special Switch 2 edition, they're going to talk about the 40th anniversary in a direct or as part of a general direct. They're going to make a new logo, and more likely than not, they're probably going to release 1 or 2 new games. And just to hammer home the fact that we are almost certainly going to get some sort of Mario 40 celebration, let's take a look back at Mario's last 4 5-year anniversary milestones and see how Nintendo celebrated them. Because since Mario's 40th anniversary, Nintendo has done celebrations. They have released special products. They have made special logos. So I think the idea that we're not going to get any sort of 40th celebration is absurd. They're going to acknowledge it in some way, and I think it's going to be a pretty big acknowledgement for a big milestone. 40 years is no joke. I think there's like one other video game icon who can say they're that old, and it's Donkey Kong, who just got a big 3D game of his own, not really related to any sort of anniversary, but I digress. So let's go through it. The first anniversary that Nintendo actually acknowledged was the 20th anniversary, and they called it Happy Mario 20th. Not really sure what that happy branding was, and to be honest, this wasn't much of a celebration. There was a Famicom colored Game Boy Micro, which is a classic Game Boy Micro variation, so slick. There was a 20th anniversary Super Mario sound collection with all sorts of Mario music branded with that Happy Mario 20th logo, which is important. And then the Mario Wiki lists 2 game releases that were a part of this celebration: Mario Tennis Power Tour and a Dr. Mario and Puzzle League combo pack, which maybe aren't the strongest connections to Mario's 20th anniversary. Those might have just been coincidences. But the point is, even 20 years ago, Nintendo was making logos and acknowledging in even some small ways Mario's anniversary. We then get to Mario's 25th anniversary, which I think is the one that before 2020 people would point to as a pretty big celebration for Mario, even though there wasn't much. There was, of course, the Super Mario All-Stars Limited Edition, which I have right here. It came with the 4 games included in the original Super Mario All-Stars on a disc, which is sort of silly because this is like 5 megabytes of data on this disc. It's such a small download that I saw this on Twitter. You can insert the disc, it'll download the data, and then you can play the game without the disc on the Wii, which is something that isn't the case for literally any other game on that system. It also came with a Super Mario All-Stars pamphlet, which is pretty cool. Remember when Nintendo did this? Remember when Nintendo put freaking pamphlets in their games? Yeah, me neither. I also, had some art that I did on this, make it personal. I was like 10, 25. I was like 5 when this came out. Jesus. Okay. But no, this is pretty cool. This has like information on all 4 of the games in the collection. There also, I believe, was a CD included that was sort of a history of Mario. I don't have that. But I do have this, and this was pretty cool. Obviously, like, looking back, it was kind of lame, but at the time, I would imagine this was pretty hype. Again, I was 5. I thought it was so freaking cool, but I don't know if other people felt the same. And there were also numerous Wii bundles released with various Mario games to celebrate the 25th anniversary. We then get to the 30th anniversary, which before 2020 was the biggest Mario anniversary celebration, but I don't think people think of it as such because I don't think people realize that what happened in 2015 was part of the 30th anniversary for Mario. And that, of course, was Super Mario Maker, which in its initial trailer was advertised as something to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Mario. You saw the 30th anniversary logo sort of being made in an NES Mario level, and it was revealed to be Mario Maker, which was a super exciting announcement for the 30th anniversary of Mario. The idea that you could make your own Mario levels, that was crazy at the time. Now we're just sort of used to the idea of Mario Maker, but it was groundbreaking back in 2015. We also got a few new 3DS bundles and the 30th anniversary Mario Bros. 8-bit amiibo. Isn't this cool? 8-bit Mario in amiibo form. It actually has, if it'll zoom in, I'm recording with my front-facing camera, so you can't even read that. Super Mario Bros. 30th on the amiibo. So this, again, was something specifically made for Mario's 30th anniversary. This came with Mario Maker. So I think people assume that this was for Mario Maker, but no, this was for the 30th anniversary of Mario. And of course, they released 2 variations of this. I, again, have the one that came with Mario Maker. But because people weren't around for the Wii U days, which no blame here. It was not a fun time to be someone keeping up with Nintendo news. There wasn't a lot going on. So I don't blame you if you weren't around in 2015 following and keeping up with Nintendo, but I was, and I can tell you that they made a pretty big deal of the 30th anniversary of Mario, and that Mario Maker release and those Mario Amiibo releases were big pillars of that celebration. So I think people underrate how big a celebration the 30th anniversary was, and how that gives us such a large track record of Nintendo supporting Mario in his anniversaries, more so than I think a lot of people realize. We then, of course, get to Mario's 35th anniversary, which is certainly the biggest celebration Nintendo has done for a Mario anniversary yet. And I've seen another perception that people have online that this celebration only happened because of COVID, which is, again, something that is not true. Nintendo was planning to do a big 35th anniversary celebration for Mario before COVID happened. We got the report from, I think it was Eurogamer or something, in March, before the lockdowns happened, before the world shut down, that told us Nintendo was planning a big 35th anniversary celebration for Mario, including an all-stars collection of 3 3D Mario games on one Switch cartridge. So Mario's 35th anniversary was not just something Nintendo threw together haphazardly because of COVID and because they had basically all of their plans for 2020 blown up. This celebration was probably supposed to be even bigger, with pop-up shops and advertisements and all sorts of stuff that we didn't get because the world was shut down in September of 2020. So the 35th anniversary of Mario, I think, is seen as something Nintendo just threw together, but it was something that Nintendo certainly had planned before the year even started. And it was, of course, the biggest Mario anniversary celebration yet. We, of course, got the Super Mario Bros. Game & Watch, which is a cute little piece of tech. We got Mario 35, which got delisted, obviously, in 2021, but was a super cool little NSO perk. We got Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, which is a thing that exists. We, of course, got Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury announced, and the biggest announcement probably from that show, the Super Mario 3D All-Stars Collection that was announced at that September Direct and released, I believe, just 2 weeks later in September. This was a pretty cool collection. I know people have problems with it, the main one being that they took it out of stores on March 31st. Very stupid that it was a limited release, but I've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of this game. I played all 3 of these new HD versions they made, and I've 100%ed Galaxy like twice on this cartridge, so it was a worthwhile release for me, but I understand it was a little lame for some people. They also announced Mario Amiibos for the 35th anniversary. These don't have 35th anniversary branding, but they were released alongside Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury and were technically part of that 35th anniversary celebration. So just to reiterate, yes, Mario 35 was the biggest anniversary celebration we've ever seen for Mario. But it was not something that was just haphazard and thrown together during COVID. It was something that Nintendo was planning for a while, which is just more evidence for the fact that Nintendo is going to acknowledge the 40th anniversary of Mario in some way next month. Even if there's not 5 game announcements, which technically there were 5 game announcements at that Mario 35 Direct, which is just wild to think about in retrospect. There will be some stuff they show off, and I'd be pretty surprised if there's not 1 or 2 new updates or just straight up new games for Mario. So what could those games be? Let's get into it. I first want to talk about the obviously fake New Super Mario Bros. Collection that was floating around online a few weeks ago. Obviously, that's not real, but I would say I would like to see that happen. The new Super Mario Bros. Games are not great games. I'd like the DS one a lot more than the other two, but they're also not bad games, and having all 3 of them on a $50 or $60 package would be a pretty good deal. I also like the idea of the Switch and the Switch 2 by proxy being the system that has like every single Mario game. Because if you think about it, between all of the new Mario games that came out on the Switch, all of the Mario games on NSO, and all of the Mario games to get remasters, ports, and remakes on the Switch, I mean, the Switch is the Mario console. There's almost every single Mario game released on this console, it feels like. So it does feel a little out of place to not have the new Super Mario Bros. Games on the system in some way. Now, the argument against this is that inevitably down the road, we will get DS and Wii on NSO, and Nintendo could just put the DS New Super Mario Bros. And the Wii New Super Mario Bros. On that system when the time comes. And I'm sure on the Switch 3, not to look so far ahead, I'm sure on the Switch 3 we will get 3DS games on NSO. But of course that's like 10 years down the line, so just forget about that. The point is, I would love a new Soup collection. Obviously I don't think that leak is real. Obviously I don't think it's going to happen this year. But if it does, I'd be happy, and if at some point down the line they do think of doing a new Soup collection, I would certainly pick it up. I picked up the frickin' new Super Mario Bros. U port that they did for $60 on day one, just because I like that game. 2D Mario is comfort food, even new Soup, and I would love to play through those games again. People have talked about them remaking those games in the Wonder style. That feels like way too much effort. Nintendo's never gonna do that, but that also would be pretty darn awesome. Point is, new Soup collection, I'd be down for it. I think it makes sense. Obviously, I don't think that leak is real. Now, another idea I have for Mario's 40th anniversary that doesn't fit into one of the 2 categories I have coming up is something that is sort of weird, but it's popped into my head and I can't get it out. So I just want to put it out here, and if it happens, I will look like an absolute genius. But Nintendo, of course, released their Nintendo Today app back in March, and you can see all sorts of stuff on that app. And obviously, you get to choose what kinds of posts you get to see. I, of course, selected all of them. So any Nintendo franchise is liable to show up on my Nintendo Today feed, and I do check it every day to see if there's any new Xenoblade concept art, because I think that's pretty cool, not gonna lie. And one of the things you can select to see on that app is Nintendo Classics, which shows you all sorts of retro Nintendo games. And among those Nintendo Classics posts are Game & Watch posts. And the posts in question are just videos of someone playing an original Game & Watch on a white background. And that's it. And I found those so odd because I guess they're cool little pieces of content, but I've never seen them before, and maybe they existed somewhere, but I've never seen them before. And I thought, why would Nintendo go through the effort of hiring a hand model or whatever, teaching them how to play the game, because they do play the game pretty well, getting this white background, getting an expensive camera, and recording these videos. Because there are a lot of them. I've gotten like 10 different Game & Watch games included in these videos. And I thought, what if Nintendo is priming us for a new Game & Watch gallery? Now, if you don't remember what Game & Watch Gallery is, it was a series of games released on the Game Boy that were old Game & Watch games given a new Mario skin and re-released. And since Nintendo did those 3 Game & Watch galleries, the character of Game & Watch has become a lot bigger. He of course was introduced in Smash Melee and has been included in Smash games ever since. Game & Watch is sort of a household name now for Nintendo fans, and if there was a new Game & Watch gallery, people would actually know what that meant, as opposed to in 1990 when I'm sure people picked it up because they saw Mario on the cover, but I'm sure a lot of people didn't know what Game & Watch even was. But I think a new Game & Watch gallery, maybe in the Mario Wonder style, where they remake like all of the old Game & Watch games in a Mario skin, I think that could be a really cool release that would satisfy Mario's 40th anniversary, and also technically Game & Watch's 45th anniversary. Nintendo never mentions this because no one really cares about Game & Watch anymore, but the first Game & Watch game debuted in 1980, so it is technically a Game & Watch anniversary as well, and if they wanted to tie those two things together, they could make a new Game & Watch gallery, which I think would be a really cool, if a bit weird, release for the Switch 1 and Switch 2. I don't know, I just think it's very odd that Nintendo is releasing these Game & Watch videos, and there are technically 2 anniversaries that would relate to Game & Watch Gallery, so a new Game & Watch Gallery is something I'm just throwing out there. I don't think it's gonna happen, but if it does, I brought it up first. I don't think anyone's talked about that, but I think that could be a pretty cool part of an anniversary celebration for Nintendo. So I guess be on the lookout for a new Game & Watch Gallery game. I don't know. Maybe. That'd be cool, I guess. I don't know. But let's get into the more concrete stuff and the stuff that I think is a lot more likely to happen. I've got 2 categories here: remasters/updates and new games. The remasters/updates category is a lot bigger, so let's talk about some stuff we could see in regards to either remasters of old games or updates for games that have already come out. The first one is a simple one: Sunshine on NSO. I think this is a guarantee. We already know that the August game for GameCube on NSO is Chibi Robo, and of course we don't know what the September game is yet, but there's only a few games that it could be. And one of those games that we saw on that roadmap in that April 2nd Direct was Super Mario Sunshine. So I think that makes perfect sense as a smaller Mario anniversary announcement. Again, we had Mario All-Stars on NSO for the 35th, so why not Mario Sunshine on NSO for the 40th? I think that's an easy prediction. I think that's very obviously going to happen. Another one that I think makes a lot of sense is some sort of mention of Mario Kart World DLC, whether it be free DLC like some DK Bonanza costumes and characters, or whether it be a roadmap for the actual DLC expansion that's going to be big and massive, a la the Booster Course Pass in Mario Kart 8 that we all know is coming. It's just a matter of when. I think September is a good time for some sort of Mario Kart World DLC, especially if there's going to be a Bonanza tie-in. Everyone sort of theorized there will be because of some stuff that happens near the end of that game. It makes a lot of sense to me. And maybe they would say, hey, Mario Kart World DLC available today, and here's a preview of our roadmap for the future of Mario Kart, because this is a game that we all know Nintendo is going to be supporting for the next decade. So why not get out ahead of it and tell us about some future DLC. I then have 2 Switch 2 editions that I think make sense. The first one, this guy right here getting a Switch 2 edition. You thought the props were done. Nope, they're still a-coming. Mario Wonder Switch 2 edition. I mean, everyone and their mom has theorized it. When we got those free Switch 2 updates on June 5th, Mario Wonder was suspiciously missing, right? Odyssey got a free Switch 2 update. Friggin' Mario Bros. U got a free Switch 2 update, but Wonder did not get a free Switch 2 update, and that, of course, was odd. And it's a perfect game to get a Switch 2 update. The developers of Mario Wonder talked about how they had so many ideas left over that they didn't use for Mario Wonder, so why not just throw a few of those together, add a new world or two, and make a Switch 2 edition. I think that makes a lot of sense. You could also have a 120 FPS mode. That game would look beautiful with HDR and 4K graphics. I don't know, it feels like such an easy win, especially in a holiday season that is pretty devoid of Mario. Obviously, they are going to market Mario Kart and DK Bonanza as holiday games, but having a new Mario game for the holiday, technically new Mario game for the holiday, would make a lot of sense, and that would be Mario Wonder getting a Switch 2 edition. It would be a new Mario game on shelves. I think that makes perfect sense. The other Switch 2 edition that I think is less likely, but could also make sense, is Mario Maker 2 getting a Switch 2 edition. Obviously, mouse controls are such an obvious update to add to this game. This is another game that would have made sense for a free update, considering that Game Builder Garage got mouse controls in a free update, so it was a little bit surprising that Mario Maker 2 didn't, and that obviously primes it to be a Switch 2 edition. Obviously, a Switch 2 edition would suggest they would add another mode. I don't know what that would be. I don't think it would be Mario Wonder. That would feel a little too soon. Maybe it would be a Mario 64 level builder. That'd be kind of crazy. Maybe it's Mario Land. That'd be kind of cool. Mario Land. But regardless, I do think a Mario Maker 2 Switch 2 edition of some kind makes a lot of sense. So I think that's something we could see. I don't know if they'd announce 2 Switch 2 editions, assuming this is a Mario-specific direct. I don't know if they'd announce 2 Switch 2 editions in one little presentation, but maybe they would, and I think they both make a lot of sense. The next one that makes the most sense in the world, Mario 40. Re-releasing Mario 35, calling it Mario 40, and not taking it off the frickin' eShop after like 3 months. This would be an easy win for Nintendo. They already have the infrastructure of Mario 35. They just have to add 5 more players. Everyone would be happy. That game was pretty cool when it came out. I didn't get as into it as some people did, but I obviously would check it out again if it came out as a part of Mario's 40th anniversary celebration. And I think that just makes a ton of sense. The last 2 games I have in remasters/updates kind of go together. The first one is a 3D All-Stars re-release. Like I said before, it was pretty ridiculous that game was a limited time release. It still sold like 10 million units, and if Nintendo re-released 3D All-Stars, nothing else, no additions, just re-released it and had it on store shelves, I'm sure it would sell out once again and give them some easy money. So I think a 3D All-Stars base re-release could make a lot of sense. People have brought up that maybe 3D All-Stars could get a Switch 2 edition where they, make the graphics even better on the Switch 2 and add Galaxy 2, which could make sense. We know that Switch 2 editions are $20 more, and that would line up with the fact that 3D All-Stars was $60, so $20 for each game. You had Galaxy 2 on there for $20 more. That makes sense. But I also wonder if Nintendo would just release Galaxy 2 on its own, whether it be with new content or just a Galaxy 2 HD for $40, $50, or even $60 on the Switch 1. I mean, they know they can get away with that. They know that Galaxy 2 would sell well if they just HDify it and drop it on the Switch. I know I would pick it up even if it was at $60 because I just love that game so much, and I'd love to have it playable on the Switch and Switch 2. Could you imagine that game in 4K 60? Oh my goodness, that would be beautiful. I also think a 3D All-Stars 2 could make some kind of sense, where you have 64DS, Galaxy 2, and 3D Land, because those are the last remaining 3D Marios that aren't on Switch at all, so adding them in a collection together could make sense. But of course, with 64DS, you get into that same sort of quote-unquote problem that I was talking about with New Super Mario Bros. On the DS, where there might be a DS NSO app coming in like 3 to 5 years, and perhaps you want to hold off 64DS for that app rather than release it as part of a package. But also, if they make 3D All-Stars 2 and also make it a limited time release, they could have their cake and eat it too. It's a bunch of crazy stuff with these 3D All-Stars collections, because now that Nintendo has set the precedent with it being a limited time release, you never know what could happen, and it's, all sorts of mess, all sorts of confusing stuff. But I think all of that could make sense. A straight up 3D All-Stars 1 re-release, a Galaxy 2 HD, a 3D All-Stars Switch 2 edition with Galaxy 2 on it, or a 3D All-Stars 2 with 64DS, Galaxy 2, and 3D Land. I'd be happy with any of that. As long as Galaxy 2's on the Switch, you won't see me complaining, but I think all of that makes sense as sort of an easy remaster, especially considering the Switch 1 doesn't have a lot of games coming out for it this year. It had Donkey Kong and Xenoblade earlier in the year. It's got Pokemon and Metroid later in the year. 4 games isn't bad for a system on its way out, but I could see Nintendo wanting to throw 1 or 2 more games in the Switch's library for 2025, and something around Galaxy 2 would be an easy win for them. I've then got 3 new games here that I think could make a lot of sense for an announcement, whether a tease or an actual straight-up announcement with a date for Mario's 40th anniversary. The first one is a new Mario sports game. I don't know which one it would be. Could it be baseball? We haven't gotten that in a while. Could it be golf or tennis, considering the Camelot hasn't done anything since 2021 and they're due for a new game? And given some comments they've made, it seems like they've finished that game and they're ready to show it off for the Switch or Switch 2. I'm not sure, but a new Mario sports game makes a lot of sense. It's about time for us to get a new one. We're actually kind of overdue if you look at, the cadence of Mario sports game releases. That's a pretty easy early 2026 or maybe even late 2025, but probably early 2026 type of release for Nintendo. I think in terms of a new announcement, not a port, not a remaster, not a remake, a new announcement, I think that is the most likely in terms of a new Mario announcement. The other 2 I have here I think are more long shots, but I could also see showing up. The first one is Mario Wonder 2. I think people would have some apprehension about a sequel to Mario Wonder, especially so soon after the first, because they get visions of New Soup in their head and they get scared. I understand it. But the devs of Mario Wonder, like I said, had so many ideas left over. I think an asset reusing sequel would make a lot of sense. And if they released it early 2026 or whatever, it would be a big release for the Switch 2, because I assume it would be a Switch 2 exclusive. That would be a big release for the Switch 2. Mario Wonder sold like hotcakes in 2023. So having a quick asset reusing sequel of Mario Wonder for the Switch 2, I think could make a lot of sense and would be a big announcement to close out a Mario-centric Direct. The third idea I have for a new game, it's a pretty obvious one. You're thinking it, I'm thinking it. A tease for the new 3D Mario. By September, Bonanza will have been out for a few months and will have had some time to breathe, and also Bonanza's been beloved, so I don't think it's going to have any problem existing in a post 3D Mario announcement world like some people had worried it would have had trouble with. But regardless, by September, Bonanza will have had a few months to exist and live on its own, and I think that makes September a great time to tease the new 3D Mario, especially since people have dug into the credits. Nintendo forecasted a great video on this where it seems like the next 3D Mario might have started development in 2020 or 2021. So theoretically, we'd be coming up on a 2026 or 2027 release for that game. And even if it is 2027, even if it is a year or 2 off, it could make sense to give the first look, the first tease for that game at a Mario-centric Direct as the closer, or even at a general Direct as the closer, just to get people excited for the future of Switch 2, because they know that outside of maybe Animal Crossing, 3D Mario is their biggest cat in the bag as something that will get people excited for the Switch 2 and will sell like hotcakes when it comes out. I've said before, I don't think 3D Mario is coming in 2026. I'd love to be proven wrong. But regardless, I think a tease for 3D Mario would make a lot of sense as that one more thing for a 40th anniversary celebration Direct. Well, that's all of my thoughts on Mario's 40th anniversary. I really do think we're going to get a pretty big celebration in September. Let me know in the comments below, do you expect a big celebration for Mario's 40th anniversary? And if you do, what remasters, re-releases, DLC, Switch 2 editions, or new games would you like to see Nintendo announce for Mario's 40th? Tell me all that in the comments below. It's a freaking party down there. You don't want to miss any of it. And you don't want to miss any of it. Kind of a weird thing to say about the comments, but I will be responding to you down there. Don't you worry. So give me your thoughts on everything Mario 40th. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that big fat button. I keep talking about the Jamboree video. I literally recorded it. I will edit it and post it. I don't know if it's going to be before or after this video. It's not like a happy video. I wasn't really excited or satisfied with that Switch 2 edition, so it's a little harder to edit the negative videos because they're not as fun, but that will come out, rest assured. And there's more coming on the channel, of course. DK review is going to come eventually. Again, still trying to 100% that game, and it's just going to be a big fall for gaming, so you don't want to miss any of it. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you see everything that's coming from this channel. Share the video with a friend who's a big fan of Mario and excited for the 40th anniversary celebration. And with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.